The Galactic Naval Academy floated in the void between star systems, a monument to unity among the 73 species that comprise the Concordat. Its halls had seen countless cadets pass through, each learning the sacred protocols that kept ships from tearing themselves apart in subspace, kept weapons from overloading, kept life support functioning across biology types so varied that some breathed methane, while others required pure radiation. Cadet Sarah Chen sat in the back row of advanced theoretical engineering, her small frame dwarfed by the towering Krellian beside her and the gelatinous Vorfian that occupied 3 seats to her left. She'd grown accustomed to being the smallest person in every room. Humanity's admission to the Concordat was still fresh, barely 2 decades old, and humans remained a curiosity, their homeworld a subject of persistent skepticism. Professor Thexler, a crystalline being whose thoughts manifested as prismatic light patterns, was mid-lecture on catastrophic system failures. The Vraxian dreadnought Inevitable Dawn suffered complete reactor destabilization during combat exercises. The professor's translated voice echoed through the chamber. All 400 crew members were lost. The cause was determined to be a cascade failure in the quantum dampening field. A Zorfian cadet in the 3rd row, his chitinous plates clicking with amusement, raised a forelimb. "Professor, is it true that the human claims their species solved dampening field stability centuries ago? On their Earth?" He pronounced the word with deliberate mockery, adding air quotes with his upper appendages. Laughter rippled through the lecture hall, not cruel but patronizing. The myth of Earth had become something of an inside joke among the non-human cadets. A planet where humans supposedly evolved naturally, developed technology independently, and even left their own atmosphere before meeting the Concordat? It seemed too fantastical. Most species had been discovered and uplifted. The idea of a self-developed civilization was the stuff of children's tales. "The human documentation is extensive," Professor Thexelar said diplomatically, colors swirling with what might have been discomfort. "However, the homeworld designation Earth has never been verified by Concordat surveys. The star charts provided by humanity describe a region classified as Sector 0, a dead zone that predates modern navigation." Sarah felt her jaw tighten. She'd heard it all before. Earth was a legend, a fabrication. Humans were either refugees from a lost colony or an experiment by some ancient race. "Take your pick. Maybe the humans are just really committed to the joke," another cadet chimed in, this one a floating ethereal whose voice was all harmonics. "Inventing an entire fictional planet complete with history? That's dedication." More laughter. Sarah's hand moved to the small pendant around her neck. A simple thing, really. Just a brass disc with coordinates etched into it. Coordinates that supposedly led nowhere. The professor continued the lecture, pulling up a holographic display of reactor configurations. The critical flaw in the Inevitable Dawn was here. Thexelar's light pointer highlighted a junction point, where the dampening field intersected with the gravitational stabilizers. Under stress, the frequencies desynchronized by 0.03 cycles per second. Insufficient time for AI correction. Sarah's hand shot up. The professor's colors shifted to acknowledgement. "Yes, Cadet Chen? Permission to attempt manual field synchronization, sir." The lecture hall fell silent. Manual synchronization of quantum dampening fields was theoretically possible, but practically suicidal. The mathematics required real-time calculation of 17 variable differential equations, while maintaining awareness of feedback loops that could cook a brain in its skull. No species had the neural architecture to manage it. Not the brilliant Krellians with their dual cortex brains. Not the Vorfians who thought in parallel streams. Certainly not humans. "Cadet Chen," Professor Thexelar's colors went dark amber. "Concern. That is not advisable. The simulation safety protocols—" "I acknowledge the risks, sir." A beat of hesitation. Then a "very well. Approach the station." Sarah made her way down the tiered seating, aware of every eye following her. The engineering station was a nest of holographic controls surrounding a central haptic interface. She placed her hands on the contact points and felt the familiar tingle of the neural link establishing. The simulation loaded. A virtual reactor core materialized in her mind's eye, its quantum dampening field already showing the telltale oscillations of impending failure. Warning klaxons screamed in her ears, the same alarms that had filled the Inevitable Dawn in its final moments. Sarah closed her eyes, and then she began to work. Her hands moved across the haptic controls, but her mind was already elsewhere. Back on Earth, in a dusty garage in California where her grandfather had taught her to tune the engine of an ancient combustion vehicle. "Feel the rhythm," he'd said. "Don't just listen, feel it." Humans didn't have dual cortex brains or parallel thought streams. What they had was something the concordate science couldn't quite quantify: the ability to make intuitive leaps, to feel patterns rather than purely calculate them. 10,000 years of evolution on a death world where split-second decisions meant survival. The equations flowed through her consciousness not as numbers but as music. She felt the resonance of the dampening field, sensed where it wanted to go, and guided it there with microsecond adjustments. Her breathing steadied. Her heart rate, elevated for a human but glacial compared to the catastrophic feedback loop she was managing, remained constant. In the lecture hall, the klaxons began to quiet. Variable by variable, Sarah brought the simulation under control. The screeching warnings faded to cautionary beeps, then to nothing. The reactor core stabilized, its field synchronization holding at .998 efficiency. The alarm stayed silent. Sarah opened her eyes and withdrew her hands from the interface. The lecture hall remained absolutely quiet. She turned to face Professor Thexler, whose crystalline form now blazed with colors she'd never seen before. "How?" the professor finally asked. Sarah touched the pendant at her throat. "On Earth, we had a saying, you can't teach experience. You can only survive long enough to earn it." She paused, meeting the stares of her fellow cadets. "We call it intuition. Maybe that's the one thing you can't simulate or calculate." "Earth," the Zorfian cadet said slowly, no mockery in his voice now, "is real." Sarah smiled, a very human expression that didn't translate well but somehow conveyed everything. Never doubted it for a second. As she walked back to her seat, nobody laughed. Professor Thexler resumed the lecture, but the atmosphere had shifted. The human in the back row was no longer a curiosity or the butt of a cosmic joke. She was something else entirely. She was a reminder that sometimes the most unbelievable stories are true, and sometimes the species everyone underestimates is exactly the one you should be watching. In the vast emptiness of space, Earth remained exactly where it had always been. A small blue marble orbiting an unremarkable star, waiting patiently for the rest of the galaxy to find it. But its children? They were already making themselves known.